Our young colleague has asked us very pointed questions. Sanjib, what have we got to offer to the future?
Mr. Chairman, sir, the flavor of the evening is judiciary bashing. More precisely, judge bashing. And what better recipe than two leading lawyers and a media celebrity to do it?
At least it's not doctors bashing for a change.
But before I take such misconceived charge head on, I want to dwell on the larger sense of justice, because the topic is much more than the judicial system or the judiciary or the resolution of inter-parties disputes in courts of law. To be honest, even after nearly 18 years as a High Court judge, I don't think I have the confidence to explain justice to anyone with the satisfactory degree of clarity. But for the moment, let me confine myself to justice as referred to in the preamble of the Constitution. The preamble to the Constitution, which declares the intent and purpose of the Suprema Lex, spells out the nature of justice, liberty and equality that every citizen of the Republic is entitled to enjoy. And all this for a goal of promoting among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity of the nation. The principle of justice enshrined in the Constitution is to bring about social, economic and political parity so that there is harmony in society. The idea of justice that the Constitution conveys appears more to do with removal of injustice and ensure a level of equality and equal opportunity to be brought about. Philosopher, social scientist and Harvard professor John Rawls, in his magnum opus of 1971, A Theory of Justice, spoke of justice being nothing but fairness. And he perceived that this justice as fairness was a core component of constitutional democracy. And he perceived that every institution had to be founded on this principle of justice being fair and justice being available to all as a fundamental social structure. In his critique of A Theory of Justice, our own Professor Amartya Sen, in his idea of justice, agreed that justice was, in a sense, a kind of fairness. But he moved away from the Niti-centric view that Rawls propagated to a Nyaya-centric view. And at the end, Professor Sen concludes that the best way to do justice is to remove injustice. Social justice, ladies and gentlemen, is to remove the discrimination in society, and I will not elaborate on that. Economic justice is to ensure that people have opportunities irrespective of their financial or economic situations. As for political justice, every qualified citizen should have a free and fair opportunity to participate in the electoral process and in government processes. If justice is viewed from such perspective, the Republic has taken giant strides. With the ever-increasing physical and virtual connectivity, the rural-urban divide has been greatly reduced and aspirations raised across the length and breadth of the country. An urban settlement today in India is never too far from a rural setting, except in the mountains and deserts. By and large, primary and basic education is no longer a luxury, and despite varying standards, even higher education is no longer the domain of the rich and the influential. With the accelerated demolition of the old social order, we now have children of once lesser gods adorning the highest offices in most areas, and a number of them with great distinction and as of right. Concerns still remain, but a country and its people impoverished by centuries of plundering and colonial abuse now counts itself in the highest echelons, not by its sheer numbers, but by its many achievers. In the initial months of the Republic, just after the Constitution was adopted, the elitist judiciary ran into problems with the executive because the elitist judiciary felt that the right to property and the right to land was something very fundamental and essential. Even though the political class of the day also came from elitist families, but they had a better connect with the people and realized that land had to be freed from the landed gentry for the purpose of development. Thus began a tussle between the judiciary on the one hand and the legislature and the executive on the other, a tussle that continues hopefully still today and which is desirable in the interest of democracy. With the churning of the Indian society and education becoming more widespread, the elitist culture of the higher judiciary eroded, and by the 1980s, the Supreme Court became so progressive that several of its key judgments were described as judicial activism, which in short implies straying into the legislative or executive domains and not maintaining the Lakshman Rekha. Yet it is widely acknowledged that a lot of good was bestowed on citizens by several of such judgments of the higher judiciary than may have been possible by the political executive. It, however, rankles, and it's a matter of regret, that the highest court of the land could not defend the country at its darkest hour. But as if to atone for the mistakes of the 1970s, the 1980s began with a slew of judgments in public interest. Whether it was the case of the pavement dwellers or of the lower castes being brutalized by upper castes in several states in northern India, the Supreme Court passed orders from saving jungles to protecting clean air and water. Now, for the last couple of minutes, let me dwell on the core functioning of the judiciary and what the topic really insinuates. The topic suggests that the judiciary has failed to deliver. But how often do we stop and ask ourselves, what have we given it? Have we armed it to deliver? If we go by a 1980 judgment of the Supreme Court, we should have had 180,000 judges in the country. But today we have a little more than 23,000 sanctioned posts, counting from the Civil Judge Junior Division appointed yesterday right up to the Chief Justice of India. The judge population ratio is only marginally better than the police population ratio in this country. But for all the good work that has been delivered by the Indian judiciary, from cleaning up towns to recognize the rights of the third and indeterminate gender, there has been some justifiable criticism of the Supreme Court in recent times that has been riding roughshod over minority rights. I don't think the Supreme Court has completely genuflected before the executive, but there is a disturbing trend of intolerance of dissent which we must recognize. To conclude, I would say that a lot has been done in this country if you remember the state that we were in 1947 and where we are now. Yet, a lot of work needs to be done. I have a dream that my children will live in a country where they are judged not by the God of their choice or the food on their plate, but by the content of their character. And I hope that into that heaven of freedom, my country soon awakes. God bless you all. Jai Hind.